What's going on, fellow noobs? How are you doing today? Perpetual Noob here with another episode of our blind run through Dishonored for the PS3. Now, I want to go through a couple of things before we get too far into today's episode. I am actually doing post-commentary for this episode, which I know flies in the face of the presumed style of this playthrough. You may be saying, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not my Batman glass. But I've swapped to post-commentary because I'm still very rusty from being away for the last 2 months, and though my live commentary is generally good, I think, it can still be improved even at the best of times. And I also want to make sure that I share the last couple of months, or at least the last couple of weeks, of my life with all of you. And if you follow me on Twitter, nudge nudge, follow me on Twitter, Perpetual Noob 3, excuse me, a lot of the story will be context for many of my tweets during the last couple of weeks. It's been this move has been quite an upheaval for me, and I wanted to get through all the stories with minimum distractions, like playing a game, so that we can get through the stories in just a few episodes rather than the 7, like the last time I tried to tell some long-winded stories. Speaking of long-winded, this bit is almost over, and let me just finish with we'll be back to normal live commentary soon enough, probably by week's end, maybe? Anyway, on to the stories! So, last episode we left off with finishing packing our home, and I want to take say a couple more things about that if you've got real-life friends who live near you, first off, that's awesome. And then, if they can and will help you pack and unpack a moving truck, that's even more awesome. We had a couple friends to help us with our packing and unpacking for the pod people, and it was so great. Those were incredibly long couple of days, and if we didn't have them, I kind of actually don't even want to think about that. They would have been like near impossible. I mean, we would have spent like 24 hours each day for 2 days trying to, load and unload a moving truck. So yeah, having having friends to help you move, great. And I recommend you get some if you don't have any. Now, moving on to the drive itself. If you look at a map, the route that we took was something like 25-ish hours, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but that can be done if you've got multiple people in one car and you're fine with staying seated for something like 24 hours straight. We didn't have any of that. Even though I sold my car to my brother, which I'm getting through that. I'm still a little sad, but I'm getting past that. I had that car for 8 years, and it's a long time. That's the longest I've ever owned a car. So, it was a little rough, but, I know that she's now in good hands, especially since I had to teach him how to drive stick shift before we actually handed the car off. I'd be kind of a giant asshole if I had just handed him a car and been like, okay, good luck, bye. So no, I actually gave him, like an hour worth of practice, and then was like, okay, drive me home. Which he did, just fine. Obviously, we didn't die. So, we still needed a second car for all of our stuff. Mainly, actually, our plants. I know it's a bit of and I know some of our friends have even looked at us and been like, wait, what? You're still renting a car to take across the country for plants? And, yeah, we are. Damn it. I didn't want to leave the plants behind because, some of them have been with us since we had moved out to New York. So that was like almost a decade. And so, call me sentimental, but we got a rental so that we could fit all of the plants into the cars. And thankfully, with the rental plus Madame Noob's car, we were able to take everything that we hadn't put into the moving truck, plus more, with us. And again, because the moving truck not the moving truck, the pod had to be packed, you know, a couple of days earlier than, you know, we probably would have liked. I say a couple of days, but thanks to other event timing, namely one of my other brothers getting married, thanks to that event occurring, we actually set out on our trip almost a whole week after we had to get the pod packed. That's how much time the pod people take, you know, to get across the country, apparently. So we had a ton of stuff with us, you know, to survive that that next week plus, you know, essentially the week and then the nearly week-long drive. So we had a lot of stuff to still pack in 2 cars. Anyway, it was actually pretty fun having 2 cars, though. We got Bluetooth setups so we could be hands-free with the phones, because we didn't want to get pulled over for any reason other than driving way too fast. We also had walkie-talkies for those quick moments when we couldn't wait for the phones to get out of their own way to make a phone call. Because, yes, having Bluetooth and having the hands-free tech was really nice, but when you wanted to actually make a phone call, it was, okay, command the phone, then wait for the phone to recognize the command, then secondly, wait for the phone to like actually make the phone call, because the phone was like, okay, well, here's this window, you and it's smart. I'm complaining about smart features right now, which is really ridiculous, because it was just like, oh, did you actually want to call this person? Well, I'm giving you plenty of time to say cancel. But since we were generally only calling, you know, each other, it was like, okay, phone, please, for the love, just, I told you to call this, just do it. So we also had the walkie-talkies, which actually was a lot of fun. We got to be kind of like, you know, you had to do the whole breaker and over and blah blah blah. It was a great time, and it really helped in certain scenarios. Specifically, the scenario I can really think of was traffic in Cleveland. We got into Cleveland sadly during like the middle of rush hour, and it was stop and go traffic. I mean, it was ridiculous, and thank God we did not have a moving truck, because the moving truck would have been huge and it would have been just such a mess. And thanks to not having the moving truck, thanks to having the walkie-talkies, we were actually able to navigate the traffic quite well. So, hooray, walkie-talkies. Also, bit of a noob tip. If you're going to be caravanning for a long road trip, bring walkie-talkies. It was a great function. It was a great thing to have. So, another great reason, though, for having 2 cars, separate MP3 players. Because, you know, it would have been bearable to have one set of music to listen to during the drive, but having my own set of music was awesome. Because I rarely actually do that. I rarely actually have my own MP3 player. Honestly, the MP3 player I have is actually a hand-me-down from Madam Noob, because she got a new MP3 player so she could actually store all of her music, because she has an incredible music collection. I mean, it's gigantic. You know, my music collection, by comparison, is somewhere on the order of like a quarter of the size. I think it might actually be less than that. But it was great to have that. I was very happy once we got out of like normal understood radio station range, when I was like, oh, yep, I don't know any radio stations anymore, and I could just leave the car on scan for the next 25 hours. But that really won't be all that much fun. And even though I didn't have a huge music collection, it still suited me. It still was enough music to keep me entertained. But speaking of MP3s, I would like to give a big shout out to iTunes for being what's the word? I don't have a word for it off the top of my head. But, yeah. So, apparently, back... this also shows how long it's been since I've downloaded anything off of iTunes or bought anything off of iTunes. I know, I'm so weird. I actually pay for my music sometimes. I'm just that kind of guy. Just that old. Anyway. You know, I haven't, it's been like years, and I guess I still bought music off iTunes back when they were still doing all that DRM crap where they were protecting all of their files. Okay, fine. That's a thing that happened, and now iTunes doesn't do that anymore. Great. But iTunes won't even let me convert the files to MP3s anymore. There's the option, but iTunes is like, oh, that's protected. Okay, so I went to the internet and was like, okay, how do I convert my iTunes files to MP3s? Because I don't have an iPod. I'm not part of the Apple collective. I don't have... Everything in my home is not Apple, so everything in my home, you know, can talk to everything that isn't Apple. Oh my god, I'm the worst person ever. iTunes, go... So the internet was like, oh, you just re-download them. Like, okay, that's cool. You know, delete them and then download them off the cloud. Alright, fine. Yeah, turns out like half the music that I have purchased from iTunes cannot be like re-downloaded. And I'm guessing it's because their prices are now different than when I bought them, or because I bought them piecemeal. I think it's really because the pricing ended up being different for some of the files. So now Apple's like, well, we're not going to be losing money. No. What do you think this is? You think this is some sort of free operation here? No, we're out to make money. So, sadly, I had to then... I mean, again, I'm complaining about the fact that iTunes... Well, I mean, it's true. iTunes was just not being user-friendly, like, at all. Like, I could not get the music that I wanted to use from iTunes to put onto a regular MP3 player. No. So I had to use a much slower method, and it's, you know... Because I didn't want to pay for software to convert the files I already, you know, of the music I already quote-unquote owned. And again, it's digital stuff, and then you get into all those things about like, oh, well, who really owns the digital stuff, and blah, blah. Whatever. It was just a pain in the ass. But I got through a lot of it using mainly hotel internet and reacquiring music files. And that's why it took so long. And that's why my music collection on this said MP3 player is so small. But it was still enough for me, and that's okay. So, an odd thing, we're gonna finally move away from me just complaining about iTunes. So, a funny bit about this trip was that we had done most of this trip before last year, like in 2014, or maybe it was I think it was 2014, when we drove home from the World Finals for Odyssey of the Mind. Though obviously this time we were heading west instead of east, but you know, it was still actually for about 70% of it, it was the entire drive. It was still actually a very familiar drive. We did stop in a couple different cities this time though, and I will tell you this: join hotel rewards programs, especially the free ones, because you know, whenever they're always for a hotel chain, so it just makes sense. Because they're free, so stop there and join up, because over time you'll eventually accrue enough points where you're just like, oh, okay, I can now like actually stay in a room for points rather than money. Awesome. I mean, we actually had enough points to grab most of our hotel stops for points rather than money. And we learned that apparently when you use points to purchase, to reserve your room at a hotel, the hotel becomes super nice to you. Like, one night we even got just a free upgrade. We showed up at the desk and they're like, oh, okay, blah, you bought this with points. Okay, well, here's your free room. Here's your free upgrade. And that upgrade included a jacuzzi, and it was a huge jacuzzi. It was like, I don't know, like 6 by 6, and like 3.5, like 3 to 4 feet deep. It was awesome. It was, and something else that clearly hotels, they know what's up. They got their shit going, because they put mirrors around the jacuzzi. And at first I was like, okay, this is a little weird. It's just a little voyeuristic or something. I don't know what you're doing, what you're trying to say here, hotels. But no, you know what it's for? It's so you can actually watch Cartoon Network watch the TV from no matter where you're sitting in the jacuzzi. For me, that's gonna be Cartoon Network, and that made it awesome. That made it such a cool thing. I mean, you're not supposed to stay in a bathtub for, hours. It's apparently bad for you or something. But when you can just watch the TV from the nice warm bath, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna do that. You're gonna sit in the tub for hours and watch TV, and it'll be a great night. So yeah, I'd say, join up with hotel reward programs. Again, it's free. You just, every time you then go to a hotel, you're like, oh yeah, I'm on your rewards, because they'll be like, oh, are you a rewards member? And you're like, yes, well, yes I am. Please now give me my points. And it's apparently just works out with some great benefits. And this was kind of one of the first times I've really gotten to experience those awesome benefits. So it helped. It helped with the trip. When you're driving long days, it helped to, have a fun place to stop where, you get this great giant tub. It's magical. Anyway, I'm getting lost in thought on just the whole, like, oh my god, the bathtubs. So I'm generally, I'll admit, I am generally a Starbucks fan. That's usually our go-to coffee place, which I know is I'm a bit of a traitor because I'm originally from the Dunkin' Donuts area of the country, but I'm sorry, Starbucks coffee's delicious, and it's really handy when you've got to make a really long drive. It's a very nice thing. But I've got to say, Starbucks may need to watch out. As we got a chance to stop at a Caribou Coffee. Now, to be fair, we stopped at Caribou Coffee because it was the closest coffee shop to the hotel we were staying at. But I'm glad we did. I'm glad it was the closest to our hotel because it was nice. Like, the two baristas we essentially met were awesome, and they were very personable, and the coffee was delicious. I got this like mint condition mocha or something because I'm a giant sucker for mint and chocolate, and it was fantastic. I loved it, and I was like, oh, well, hello, Starbucks competitor. This is delicious. I will take all of these. I'll take all of these so I can survive these long drives. Because again, we did this in a few days. So each day was kind of like 8 hours ish of driving. I shouldn't. It wasn't exactly 8 hours ish of driving. It was the first couple of days were about 8 hours ish, and then we made a short a relatively relatively short drive to Omaha and stayed there per the recommendation of a couple of our friends who live out here in Denver. Most specifically for the Omaha Zoo, is what one of them was saying. And I'll tell you, Omaha, like, yeah, I did the upper crust, East Coaster, yes. Everything in the Midwest is just a podunk town with a bunch of hicks in it. Yes, aren't we just so elite in the Northeast? I did have that little moment, unfortunately, where, you know, we got to Omaha and I was like, oh my god, what? There are skyscrapers? There are like shiny buildings? Holy crap. Okay, this is really cool. I'm interested. Let's really let's explore. And you know, we actually took an extra day in Omaha. It was kind of like giving us in a sense kind of giving us our own little like weekend break amongst all the driving, because we were just like, okay, here we go. And it was a really cool town. I mean, they had, I mean, I know it's like they had a beercade, which is awesome because those arcades are already like a you know, pretty much a near extinct you know, venue, but now you get to add alcohol on top of it. Hooray! Sign me up. And of course, it's a lot of the arcade games that somebody of my age would have grown up with. Jesus, oh god, oh my back. But beercades are also, I think, slightly diabolical, because one, they mix. A lot of the arcade games they give you are that are accessible are like these quarter eating games, and so mixing it with alcohol is just, I mean, brilliant business smarts, but so evil for the consumer and the player. But they did have a really cool. They had a really cool basement that was like you paid us it was like a $3 cover charge, and you got like 3 hours of free play, which is very, very, very doable. Like, you could very easily spend $3 in way less than 3 hours in a beercade or in an arcade in general, especially when that arcade is loaded to the gills with like pinball machines and games like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Captain America and the Avengers, The Simpsons, you know, Gauntlet Legends. I mean, when you've got an arcade filled with games like that, even if you're really good, you're going to probably go through $3 within a few hours. So it was I gotta say, I love free play in a beercade. It's so much fun. And with it, we actually ended up going there a couple of nights. First night it was just Madam Noob and I, and we played a ton of pinball. And it turns out that at least like on my first attempt of like this Transformers pinball game, I was really good. I got something like, I was going crazy. I actually ended up with two replays by the end of it. You know, I got one for getting like, you know, the appropriate score. You know, I don't know if you've ever played a pinball game or not. You know, because I know that a fair amount of you are of a diverse, you know, age range. So, I mean, if you haven't, most pinball games, modern pinball games now, they all have like a score that says, oh, if you get to this score, you essentially get a free credit and you'll get to play again with all 3 balls and whatnot. And I achieved that score on my first attempt. I never matched it afterwards. I definitely suffered from my usual curse of like doing my best on the first try, and then after that, subsequently just being awful. But at one point I had like 5 balls on the table, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm handling all this. I am a pinball wizard. I was like Tommy. It was insane. At least I felt like that. I felt like I was the pinball wizard that for that one moment. But then the second night we went there, we actually went there with a couple other friends, so it was like all 4 of us took over the Captain America and the Avengers game, and we just went nuts. And thank God for free play, because, you know, otherwise we would have spent like $10 on that game alone, and may still have not beaten it then. But when you've got free play, you can totally beat those games, because you can just jack up your health to maximum and then run through, and then, oh no, my health is now at like half. Okay, jack. Yay, back to maximum. And then on essentially the second day, we also went to the Omaha Zoo. You know, again, that was the kind of the big draw item, and it was actually pretty cool place. It was huge. It was a very, very big zoo, and we actually still caught it in the middle of like renovations for their exhibits. A lot of their exhibits were being changed up and improved. But then there was also it was a unique zoo for me anyways. I had not experienced a zoo like this, where a lot of the exhibits were essentially, I'd say, interactive. You know, or maybe free range is the better way to put it, because a lot of the animals could actually just wander around. Like even within the zoo itself, like outside of some of the exhibits, there were just like peacocks just out, you know, just pestering you for food. Just like, hey, I see you have food. Do you want to give me some food? I'm a peacock. I'm adorable. Give me some food. And you're like, no, get away. No, bird, get away. Please don't murder me. I don't have food for you. But then some of the exhibits, there were like these aviaries where birds are just flying around. You're like, okay, that's a thing. You know, and then there's like a rainforest exhibit where all these animals are just out and about, and you can walk to them. They'll walk up to you. It was very cool. I got pissed on by a bat or 2. I don't know. I kind of fled after that. I was like, yep, okay, well, a bat peed on me. I'm done. I think I'm gonna go outside. Funny enough, I said, I think I'm gonna go outside now, because we were inside like the rainforest exhibit, and we went there during feeding time. And I mean, now, okay, so these aren't like, there's not like vampire bats with like, I'm gonna suck out your blood, you know, we're all gonna die or something. No, it was just it was these fruit bats, and when all the fruit came out, these bats went bonkers. And, you know, they're like birds, apparently, where they're just like, oh, just pee. It's time to pee. And I'm flying around, I don't care. And, yeah. That was a thing. So, I mean, I can check that off the bucket list, obviously. That was a thing that was on my bucket list of, oh, be pissed on by a bat. You know, I mean, as I'm sure is on many of your bucket lists, to have a bat urinate on you. Thankfully, it does wash out pretty easily. Thankfully. One funny thing, though, and it was an enjoyable thing, was that one of the larger varieties of fruit bats, we saw it, and it was munching on some fruit, and then wasn't flying anywhere, and just was like, all right, well, I have to pee. And so it actually like rotated and flipped over and did like essentially just hung there. I was like, okay, now I can pee, so I don't pee on my face. And it was like one of those moments like, oh, so they don't pee on it. They actually know how to deal with this, and they'll just turn over and be like, doop, doop. There we go. All right, so there was a bit of so there's some gross stuff to our travels here, but it's okay. that's where the gross stuff ends. Because after this, from Omaha, our last, that was our last major stop. So the next one is actually going to be Denver, which is where the next episode will go in terms of the great story. So look at that. We should actually be essentially like before even the week's over, we should be done with these with this great story and with the post commentary. And I'll get back to talking about the game itself and all the antics we're getting into. So I just want to say thanks, Noobs, for hanging out with me today. I hope you had a good time. If you did have a good time, please give that like button a click. And if you are not currently a member of our Noob community and want to stay up to date with everything happening on the channel, I hope you hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you. I am the Perpetual Noob, and I can't wait to hang out with you next time.